I come from the central north of Tasmania. Kuparuna Nyara, the mountains of our spirits, otherwise known as the Great Western Tiers in the central north, which is Palatory country. So, sex and death, eh? Yeah. The two things we don't talk about. You say sex and you get pregnant. You say death and you die. Yeah. Lies. So tonight, kicking and screaming, we're all going to increase our death literacy. So, my people, yes. And the science of end of life and death and how we do things. In terms of social history, yes, you have a social science researcher in your midst. Clutch your pearls, hide behind your furniture, people. You can die at home with an assisted or an unassisted death. You can have your pets around you, your plants around you, your music or not, as you like, and we can do it without care or burnout. But Annetta, you cry. Why is that important? Because, my beautiful people, carer burnout, particularly primary carer burnout, which is usually spouses, but sometimes it's siblings or children. It's a global public health concern. So, who in the room is going to die? That's right. Not immediately. Nerd Night is not over. I've actually met the third speaker. He's fabulous. And I'm fun. Really, you'd kick yourself if you fell off the perch now before I'd finished speaking. But we're all going to die. Now, okay, here's the question. Who in the room has actually got their planning in place? Be weird if I didn't. Yeah, teddy bear stamps for everyone. Even if your hand is halfway up, could you go, yeah, it's halfway done, but I haven't signed it. Get your planning done. Because a well-planned end of life is an end of life that allows you and the people who care about you to focus on quality of life at end of life, and that's what my research was about. That, by the way, is my dog Cully, who died on the 30th of November. Yeah, he was an incredible being. He was 13 3/4. Yeah, and he actually got a mention in my PhD before my husband did, so he was my research assistant. You know, I'm fond of my husband, don't get me wrong, I love my dog. And it's, there are two photos, a true story, two photos of Cully in my PhD. None of Peter, unfortunately, he didn't make the cut. But it was kind of a joke, how many PowerPoints I could get Cully into. And I thought, well, it doesn't matter that he's dead. I'm still putting him in there. So I'm an academic, and I'm also an end-of-life practitioner, and I have been a grief therapist for over 35 years. I specialize in historical traumatic grief and loss. So yes, I've worked with military veterans, but more and more I'm working with people who have complex and often historical trauma in their grief. I was 12 the first time I was in the room when someone died. And it was awful. It was from cancer, it was drawn out, it was a family with a lot of secrets, it was step-parents' family, very toxic. And even at 12, I knew there had to be a better way to do this. So I'm about 1,000 now, so it's sat with me for a long time. So I'm a qualitative researcher, and I wondered what was going on with end-of-life doulas, particularly in terms of compassionate community formation. So I researched it. But before we get into that, I probably should give you some context. What's an end-of-life doula? It's a non-medical support person for people in end of life. We're probably more familiar with birth doulas. Yep, and I was a birth doula once. No, but I like dogs. Not really, you may not have picked that up about me. And then I realized, actually, no, I'm better at the other transition. So end-of-life doulas, people who are life-limiting or terminal diagnosis, people who are doing pre-need planning, and sometimes it is, someone is dying really quickly, can you help? Okay, so we offer advocacy, education, support, and a witnessing presence, but we're not medical. It's really important to emphasize that delineation. we're community members at end of life and for support networks, so friends, family, colleagues, neighbors. Our support networks can come in all kinds of different forms. And it's a rapidly growing field. It started in Canada, Australia, the USA, and the UK. But this is actually a global phenomenon. And it's unique in the social history of dying because it used to be community members that everybody knew. Thank you, individualization. Now we're often isolated. Now we're often lonely. Original Australian research conducted by Horsfeld, Leonard, Noonan, Rosenberg discovered you need 16 people in an end-of-life network to die at home with no care or burnout. It is often a huge relief to clients where they realize they only have to find 15 more people because I'm going to be one of them. Okay? So we have a response to dying differently. And why is it important to talk about and plan for it? Without planning and support, it's hard to get the end-of-life quality of life that you might want. And don't forget, we're in a time of great distance in terms of migration. So lots of us live a long way away from our family of origin. Some of us don't actually have family of origin, DNA, or birth, or adoption. It's family by choice. Members of the LGBTIQA+ community are often thought leaders and extraordinary role models in terms of families of choice. Sometimes it's a mix of the two. Sometimes it's multi-generational. Sometimes it's nuclear. So it can look and feel very, very different from person to person. But if we don't plan, and if we don't put our plans in writing, get them signed, witnessed, and dated. If you have questions, I can help you. I can also put you in touch with some wonderful practitioners here in Melbourne and Victoria, if that is what you'd like. Networking, I think, is really important. It's also going to make sure that you get what you prefer. Okay, so if you're like me and you want a fabulous going-away party where I get to control the playlist, first song is going to be Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Pro tip, if you want to plan your funeral really effectively, truly, start with the playlist. Okay? I want to say all the really important things. I want to hear all the really important things. When you plan well enough, you can do that. It doesn't mean that there's a race to make life and death decisions by family members and financial decisions about heroic interventions or, unfortunately, lots of funeral providers are wonderful. Some are really unscrupulous. I get a lot of planning clients that say, my husband's funeral blew out by 200% from the quote. How did that happen? Plan, and you'll get what you want and allow people to focus. So, thank God for boomers, eh? I get to say that. I'm married to a boomer. We have an interesting intersection of boomers, modernity, and death literacy because boomers have changed absolutely everything as they've passed through different life stages. Boomers want information. They want choice. They insist on agency. There's a reason our death literacy is really burgeoning now. Okay, boomer, change how we do death. Next time you meet somebody who's about 1,000, a little bit older than me, thank them because they're real trailblazers in this particular area of research and options. And as our death literacy increases, our curiosity ranges wider. This is a photograph from the UK where they still don't have assisted dying laws, and it's often still problematic if you've done death tourism to Switzerland, where foreign nationals can go to die, but the police used to arrest you for conspiracy in murder when you got off the plane after your person had ended their own life on their own terms. More and more people are interested in choice, dignity, and agency, including assisted dying and end-of-life doulas. So what did I do? Semi-structured audio recorded interviews, about an hour. In Australia, Canada, the UK, and the USA, interesting fun note, thank you, Canada. no one would talk to me. I couldn't find anybody, which is weird because there were multiple peak bodies and lots of websites. And when I went back and I was recruiting and I did 2 calls for participants, I got one person, one of the 2 men in my study. And I found out later there was a lawsuit over medicalized language. So don't call yourself a midwife for anything unless you have the medical training. So everyone was scrambling to change the verbiage, change their email addresses, change their domain names. So sometimes you go looking for things and bureaucracy happens and legal processes happen and you don't get participants. So I cherish that. It was interesting. Autoethnography, I was in there too. Thematic analysis and a feminist approach to research, which meant my participants get lots and lots of autonomy. They get to decide what the final version of the recording looks like. They control the transcript. And anonymized participants, everybody got to pick their own name, and I even got a porn name, which I got to tell you, for death, that's great. So chuffed. Okay. Was an unexpected research gap found by you, Annetta? Why, yes, it was. Thank you so much for asking. It was. I wasn't looking for it, which that's kind of, I think, is the fun of research. I was looking at identity and group formation because I'd sort of done that in my PhD. And what I found was there's no standardized approach to getting information on friends and family, which means there's no standardized approach for organising support networks. If you don't have an organised support network, and some of you may have experienced this firsthand or heard people talk about it, the attrition rate of support networks is extraordinary because people they want to help, they don't know what to do. They want to help, they don't want to impose. They want to help, they don't want to push. They want to help, they burn out. Standardization can be a good thing. So let's focus on time because time is precious. If we have a standardized approach to getting information and sorting out a support network when someone is dying, they can do it at home more effectively, and we can focus on the people that we care about. We can focus on healthy self-care, and we can better utilize our time. I think these are all really, really good and important things at end of life because none of us know how much time we have. My mother died last year. Rude, by the way. So rude. I think personally she just didn't want me to walk in and go, shall I put you to bed with a shovel, Janie? One more time. She wasn't going to let me say Shady Pines, Ma. Shady Pines. For anyone who's very young in the room, just look up the Golden Girls. You'll be glad you did. But she was 90. And we had planning in place. So even though she didn't die at home and it was fast, rude, everything before and like all the decisions were made. And it's been, incredibly sad. It's the first anniversary next month. I've been able to focus on my grief, and so have my siblings, because good planning meant we could just be in the moment. I'd like to think that maybe I'm going to live to be 90, maybe, but I don't know. One of you might decide that really you just don't like me as a public speaker, and you might hunt me down. I've been waiting for students at universities to do that for years, probably with a bus. But I don't know your life. None of us know. So live every moment to the fullest, and especially if you've been given a medical countdown clock. Yeah. So this is what I came up with. This is what I call, can't imagine where I got the name from. This is the Mallon Model. There is actually a Venn diagram that is similarly parabolic, but it's vertical. And that came from the compassionate community, compassionate city movement, really, in the UK, which is the Australian sociologist who works a lot in the UK, Alan Kelleher, Dr. Alan Alan Kelleher, and Julian long COVID brain fog just hit. I can't remember Julian's last name, medical doctor. Anyway, but what it didn't have was a micro component. So in essence, again, didn't realize it at the time when I was writing it, but this completes the compassionate community model. So we have cities and neighborhoods and communities, and now we have something that works in the domestic sphere as well. It's got 3 roles: the intimate, the gatekeeper, and the peripheral. It's incredibly easy to duplicate because it's simple and straightforward, and therefore it's easy to teach. So I run masterclasses on it, but there's a free academic article that's with Palliative Care and Social Practice, which is a SAGE journal. I checked the stats 2 days ago. It's been downloaded almost 5,000 times. Yeah, I'm pretty chuffed. It's free. Please do so. Sorry, I've hit something I shouldn't have hit. Whoa. I wanted to go backwards. Yeah, there we go. And it does complete the ComCon model. So thank you very much to my graphic designer who helped me streamline this also with color. I'm incredibly visual, so this makes sense to me. So what we've got is intimate. So these are the people that are providing the moment-to-moment and day-to-day care. They're the people in the bedroom or in the living room, spending the most physical proximity time with the person who's at end of life. It isn't the most important role. It's really important to remember that every single one of these shells, these roles, these ovals, doesn't work if the other 2 are not in place. All 3 are equally important. In fact, when I teach this, I start with peripheral for that reason. But I forgot to put them in the right order for tonight, so we're doing it slightly differently tonight. There we go. Let's all be special. So often we think, oh, well, this is going to be like, you know, the spouse or the child. Yeah, sometimes it's the best friend. Sometimes it's a cousin. Sometimes it's a business partner. Because sometimes being this close over a long period of time is really painful. Not all of us are designed to sit and be quiet. And I love the way that Hannah Gadsby described her grandmother dying I think it's her TED Talk, cocooned within herself, to witness and support someone as they go through the stages of shutting down and finishing their life requires a particular kind of steady state, emotionally and psychologically. There's no shame if you can't do that, and there's certainly no shame in stepping away, and this is where this model is really helpful because you can move roles. Gatekeeper. Anyone ever worked at a nightclub? This is the door bitch with the velvet rope. And you know what? Give him a clipboard. People always pay attention to clipboards, don't they? Yes. Right? This is the person who organized and directed by and informed by the person at end of life, who gets to know what and when. This is phone calls, organizing the day book of the household, social media. If you're working with a Gather My Crew sort of platform where you're organizing people, they keep the calendar and the schedule. So it's the bureaucracy and the organizing. Works really well for people who like to organize. Often dominant and top personalities do really well here, but not anyone who's on a power trip, because you don't want them siloing and playing games with information. So for people who are very, very good at being in their heads and very good with organization, this is fabulous. And then we have the peripheral role, which is the people who keep the household running. They do the laundry, they put away the groceries, they walk the dog, water the plants, pick the kids up from soccer. This is also the person who really can often see what's happening before anybody else does, because they have a little bit of distance, and you need that. They'll catch burnout, they'll catch breakdowns, and they'll catch where people aren't asking for support. It's a really, really important role. And sometimes you want to move from the intimate to the peripheral because you need a break. Or you know what? You're not answering one more bloody phone call about what kind of sandwiches they need to bring to a garden picnic to say goodbye next week. So you move out of gatekeeper. It allows for moving schedules. It allows for people to have healthy self-care. And it allows for really good communication. 3 distinct and related roles. Caters for personality types, which is often a way we don't think about organising support systems, but it can be really effective. Rapidly changing schedules are accommodated for, because just because someone is dying, it doesn't mean that life stops. You know? Animals need to go to vets. Work crises happen. We get sick. Stuff happens. Supports network member retention and allows people who might think, I really like to be there, but I'm not a family member. Everyone can contribute. Maybe the neighbour that only ever said hi once a month, they might come and mow the lawn and weed the garden. And they never talk about anything, but they're there and they can contribute. People from work who really do want to participate and want to support and want to express care, but aren't very good with words. This is also an excellent role for people like that. Yep. And it works for assisted and unassisted deaths, which is fabulous. Free article alert. This is it. I had a QR code, but it was only free for a short period of time, and then I couldn't afford it for one, because I had long COVID and I wasn't working. But compassionate community structure and function, because I'm into snappy titles. A standardized micromodel for end-of-life doulas and community members supporting those who wish to die at home. Doesn't that just trip off the tongue? Right. And there's your, just if you Mallon Model, compassionate community, it'll come up. I think that end-of-life doulas are a very interesting part of end-of-life networks and services generally. I actually do belong to an international research group. I'm the Australian representative. And we're doing some really interesting research. I'm looking at the value of death and end-of-life doulas, so I'm considering macro public health and end-of-life doulas in terms of the Lancet report that came out in 2022. And all of you, thank you for being here. Congratulations on increasing your death literacy, and do your planning. Thank you. Hi.
What a very fascinating talk. I've never met a death doula before, but now I can tick that one off the list.
I so rarely bite. I'm not sure if that's disappointing or not.
We'll get some house lights and I'll see if anyone has a question, but maybe I want to ask the first question. It's a very silly question. You said you have a porn name. What is it?
Oh, no, one of my participants gave me the porn name, and it was...
We can go with Death Barbie if you like.
Oh, no, like my porn name would be Fluffy Grove.
I'm not going to ask any further questions. If anyone has a question.
But no, my participant's porn name was good. I've just had a COVID brain fog blank on it. Sorry.
We have a question down the front here.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the relationship of dementia and how you can implement that into your program.
Yep. So my mum had Alzheimer's, so she died of dementia too. Number one, dementia is a terminal illness. We don't really know that generally, but it is a terminal diagnosis. There are some very good TikTok accounts out there. I follow one in particular. If you contact me after that, I can send it to you. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. But lots and lots of ways to talk with and interact with someone who is in cognitive decline. It depends on the pathway. because also dementia is deeply personal. My mother's first diagnosis was severe Alzheimer's because our GP wouldn't listen when we said she's losing information. It took a couple of hospitalisations and me lodging a complaint with the hospital that got the chief geriatrician to do the Montreal test and one of the other big ones. Because it's like a symptom cluster. It's actually hard to pinpoint dementia. So we miss the early access drugs. So do continue to ask. It's a matter of working with your doctor. And then the Wicking Dementia Education and Research Centre, which is part of the University of Tasmania, they have a massive open online course that's free. Lots of information. Dementia Australia has fantastic resources. We're starting to have conversations. So Voluntary Assisted Dying Australia, New Zealand, the peak body, they just had their first conference late last year. It's going to be an annual thing. Dementia and assisted dying in terms of consent and legislation, which we'll have to be really careful, obviously. But this is something that people are very concerned about. I think education, by the way, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing. And my heart goes out to you because I know. And patience. One of the most important things is to remember that there may be all kinds of things going on in the way people perceive light and shadow and hearing things or seeing things that we don't. Give people with dementia time. Be really patient. Again, this is where having a network of people is good, because if you're losing it and I need to just go outside and go for a walk, someone else can step in and be that very careful support. I hope that's answered your question.
We probably have time for one more question. We've got a burning one down the front here. So can people take on multiple roles within your model?
Yep. And they frequently do. So you might have someone who's incredibly organised, but also really empathetic, high EQ, and they're going to be in the room and on the phone. Also, let's face it, not all of us has 16 people. I've had people take this model and go, right, we've got 3 people, how do we do it? Great, we modify. It can be tailored for different circumstances. So sometimes you're occupying one role at a time and you move. Sometimes it's a couple and you wiggle. Do your own dance. That's a great question. Thank you. And I'm sorry for the deaths of your grandparents. 3 and yeah, that's hard. Thank you.
I think with that, we'll let Annetta off the hook, get her off the stage, but Annetta will be around in the breaks. So feel free to ask her any questions.
Come find the jacket.